Well, good morning. My name's Ehssan Veiszadeh. I'm the Deputy CEO here at the Committee for Sydney. Really great to be here with you today to present our results of our yearly Life in Sydney report that we do in partnership with Ipsos. And I'd like to acknowledge Stuart Clark and his team at Ipsos for their wonderful work this year. So this year we polled more than 1,000 people from the length and breadth of Sydney. And as you can see, it covers all the key demographics: education, occupation, ages. And what we found around quality of life was that Sydney-siders are generally happy. 74%, a big number of people, are satisfied with the quality of their life, slightly down on last year, but still a very, very high portion of people satisfied with living standards in Sydney. 10% on the flip side are dissatisfied. And they're quite optimistic about the future. Just 20% of people think things will get worse over the next 12 months. And when you consider we're in the third year of the pandemic, still the CBD is pretty quiet. Perhaps there's more people here than the rest of the CBD right now. This is pretty heartening for me that the fundamentals are strong and people are expecting a bounce back. And if we drill down into the numbers a bit more on quality of life across the key cities, we can see Sydney-siders are pretty much the same level of happiness as Toronto, New York and London. So the great thing was this year with Ipsos, we were able to go into the field in those world cities, and this was between January 5 and 19. And you can see we're pretty satisfied here. And if we look a little bit deeper into the key indicators of satisfaction, Sydney-siders are broadly happy with the parks they have access to, cultural facilities, the nature. We have wonderful harbour just outside that the rest of the world does not have, many cities do not have. But when it comes to housing, the picture is not so rosy. Just 11% of people agree that they have access to affordable, decent housing. And as someone who's trying to upscale right now with my family so the kids have a bit more space to run around, I can tell you the market is very, very hot. Nationally, housing in Sydney is much more of an issue than other states and territories. You can see here, it's the top issue. Those bread and butter issues, cost of living, housing, healthcare, are very big in Sydney. Across Australia, the economy and cost of living still features quite highly. Here you can really have a bit of a teaser for the upcoming state and federal elections to see what kind of announcements we might have. And just today on radio you heard, I think, that we've got a new cost of living voucher for families that the state government is putting out there. So there's plenty of those announcements I think you can expect to see from Canberra and the Perrottet government as well. This year we really drilled down into what living standards are like in the east and the west. And overwhelmingly, the news is pretty good. People in Western Sydney are happy with the quality of their life. 71% are satisfied. And as someone who grew up in Western Sydney, when we first moved from Iran to Australia, I can tell you it's a beautiful place to be, wonderful food. We all know that. But there are some issues that need addressing. Overwhelmingly, people are quite reliant on their cars. 70% of people in Western Sydney commute using their cars, compared to 46% in the east. 24% walk in the west, compared to 34% in the east. And when we look across the key indicators again of quality of life, we can see the numbers are pretty strong for satisfaction in Western Sydney overall. There is agreement that they have good access to good quality facilities, but you can see some clear lag between east and west. When it comes to diverse range of shopping, leisure and dining experiences, east edges slightly the west, but the gap really does widen when we look at crime. That's quite a worry. So 47% of people agree in the east that they feel safe, compared to 37% in the east. Likewise, cultural facilities, there's quite a lag there. 52% in the east, 42% in the west. And thankfully, we do have some investments on cultural facilities, but it's not just about those big facilities. It's about those round the calendar events that we need to see in Western Sydney as well. So hopefully, we'll see a bit more about that as well. When it comes to the top issues facing residents across the world, we can see housing is a major issue. Interestingly, it is apparently a bigger issue here in Sydney than it is in New York. But when it comes to crime, we don't even see it in our top 5, but we see it in New York and London. And the same goes for poverty in Toronto. Doesn't feature in our top 5, but it does in Toronto and London. On the flip side, population. Rates are mentioned in our top 5. Quite interesting. Again, some of those fraught political issues about density and population growth, apparently more of an issue here in Sydney than it is overseas. Pleasingly, it looks like Sydneysiders are so happy with the quality of life, they're unlikely to leave. So that's a good thing for us. But on the flip side again, those global cities, they're more likely to leave. So hopefully, as the borders start opening up again, there's an opportunity here for us to pick up those talented workers, tourists, those things that we've missed desperately over the last 3 years. While Sydneysiders are happy with their quality of life, we can still see there is quite a sense of caution in the community. I mean, just look outside the window when we go for morning tea. Hopefully there's a few more people than there were this morning, but it's still pretty quiet at the moment. And the numbers here confirm that. People are more comfortable being in their communities, travelling by car, walking in their communities, and on the flip side, they're less comfortable travelling on the public transport system, going to events, concerts, and travelling overseas seems to be a little bit further down the line. So really what we're seeing here is lockdown by choice rather than government mandate. And as I said before, it'll be at least another year for many people to feel comfortable enough travelling overseas. I mean, that seems to be quite an obvious thing to say when there aren't many flights and the borders are mostly closed. But still, you can see here, people are probably more comfortable staying within their locales than going overseas. It's clear there's broad support to move away from lockdown. I mean, this allows us to look through the social media noise and all the media commentary. It seems like people are well and truly over lockdown. I mean, look at us here today. We were given an opportunity to watch this online. Overwhelmingly, we are all here, mostly. So that's great. 56% of people in this survey supported the government's move away from lockdown settings, and just 27% opposed it. There's even stronger support for government mandating putting restrictions on unvaccinated people. 71% of people supported restrictions on unvaccinated people. On the flip side, 13% opposed. To me, this really shows, I guess, the obvious, that people still understand that vaccines are the secret to getting us out of pandemic settings. And I think people just want the governments to do what they need to do to get us back to normal. Unsurprisingly, working from home is still very popular. Here you can see, comparing 2020 numbers to 2022 numbers, it hasn't even moved by 1%. 55% of people are still working from home compared to 45%. And it's still very much a positive experience for many people. People agree it saves them a lot of time, they prefer working from home, and they say they're more productive. And interestingly, they still agree that it is better for their mental health. And with the kids back at school, I definitely agree with that too. All of this is obviously adding to less commuting to work, predominantly to the CBDs. The typical 9 to 5, 5-day-a-week working week has obviously changed. We are working from home far more, but the interesting thing is people don't expect it to snap back up to pre-pandemic levels over the next 6 months. You can see here, yes, there's a slight increase in the expectations of over the next 6 months going back into the office, but still we expect a few days or a couple of days to be working from home. So this obviously poses some challenges for our CBDs. With stagnant wages and the rising cost of living, this year has been a massive feature of our Life in Sydney report. A massive 85% of people are concerned about cost of living in Sydney. I mean, that is a very, very powerful number, 85%. And here's a quote from one of the people who was polled. "The rising cost of living is becoming concerning and taking a toll on my mental health." I mean, this really shows that this is a massive problem for many people in Sydney. And again, a hint as to what we might see over the next couple of months with election campaigns. 26% of people frequently or always go without essential goods and services. In a wealthy and prosperous city like Sydney, I find this quite alarming. There's a lot to be optimistic about in this report, but there are clear pressures on many families, and we need to be conscious of that. Those people who feel these pressures are younger and low-income households, unsurprisingly. And the number one theme, though, in this report is housing. We've heard it from our speakers so far. It is a massive, massive issue for people, for Sydney-siders. We can see right here. The challenge for the government, though, is the solution is not easy. At the moment, the state government has the stamp duty reform on the table, which we support very, very strongly at the Committee for Sydney. Despite all the conversation about it and the debate in the public, there still is a third split in the community of support, opposition, and neutrality. And I can tell you, having come from state government, they are very aware of this. This is the challenge. If you are going to win the policy debate on this, you need to wage a very, very strong comms campaign. And at the end of the day, right now, people have yet to make up their mind. But the people who are more likely to support it are those with skin in the game. Young people. People who are thinking about their first purchase, sometimes first purchase, sometimes second, but often first purchased. The unemployed and lower household income brackets. So when it comes to choice, there is much stronger support in the community. 42% of people would like to be given the choice between an annual land tax and the current stamp duty that's on offer. And this really tells you why the government has gone with this political approach. And on the supply side, despite the media commentary that it is such a negative thing in the community, people do support more supply, I should say in this slide, as long as it comes with a strategy to put down the cost of living. 56% of people support building more homes and apartments to drive down the cost of living. That is a pretty big number. And the highest support comes from 18 to 34-year-olds. There's even slightly more support for building homes above and near train stations, so long as the green and open spaces in our suburbs are protected. Around electric vehicles, we've had some great results last year from the federal and state government in terms of announcements around electric vehicles. Federally, we need to see more on that front. This report shows what we already know. Unfortunately, the big switch has yet to occur. Only 5% of people currently own an EV, but some green shoots. 14% of 18 to 34-year-olds have voted with their feet and have already bought their first EV. The overall picture is, as I said, unsurprising. Just 22% of Sydney-siders say they intend to buy an EV within the next 5 years. And as is consistent with the data about Western Sydney and the high reliance on cars, that cohort, Western Sydney, is one of the least likely cohorts to actually make that switch. For most people, the biggest barriers to getting into the market for EVs are the higher costs, concerns about speed, and charging stations. So unsurprisingly, we need policy to meet where community concerns are to see that big switch. And we hope to see that, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks, couple of months in terms of federal government announcements, he's hoping. So I hope you can see here that Sydney's a wonderful place. We all know that. People are satisfied, but there are some key challenges that are unique for our city. We look forward to hopefully coming up with a couple of solutions today to meet those challenges. Thank you.